Welcome everyone. Last week we had a power outage, so we were unable to do the suttas that had been selected, so we are doing them this week. And it's good to see a couple people here on the Zoom land, and whoever's over in YouTube, welcome. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang Dhammang Sangham Namasami. Much veneration to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha that so many years, so many societies later, we are still receiving the words of the Buddha and that they are deeply applicable. So a topic that hasn't changed a lot over the generations, except for maybe some of the remedies we have for it in the meantime before death, is being gravely ill. So we're going to start with a sutta called Gravely Ill. And let's see, sharing screen. Let's see. Get to the notes. Gravely ill. All right. I realize I haven't been to one that has needed to do the screen sharing, because usually this is Sayadaw Vijana's last couple of days of retreat time, so she'll be back next week, and we'll see. I'll pick something, but we'll both be here for next week's sutta. This week we are going to start with Gravely Ill, which we hope Sayadaw Vijana is not, unless it's for her enlightenment. So welcome. And we will start with Samyutta Nikaya 5210. Now the 52 section of the Samyutta Nikaya is the Anuruddha Samyutta. So the suttas that are within it are ones that involve Anuruddha. Often Anuruddha is the one speaking within these suttas. In this case, Anuruddha, Venerable Anuruddha, was staying near Savatthi in the dark forest, and he was sick, suffering, gravely ill. And notice we've got this suffering, dukkha, dukkita, afflicted, experiencing pain. So a lot of times when we think of an arahant, we don't think of them as experiencing dukkha. However, arahants have bodies too, and dukkha will still emerge in the form of pain. There can be also, just habitual movements that are intrinsic to a human life form that an arahant will still experience, but they don't do any of this attachment of this is happening to me, it is mine. But you can still have a backache or whatever affliction it was that Anuruddha was beset with at this time. When I saw the word here, the words for sick, suffering, and gravely ill, the word I'm used to most often for illness is Moggallāna. And Moggallāna is one that almost every day I try to do a reflection on the use of medicines, the use of things that are there to support the body to keep maximum health without creating other conditions. And so the word Moggallāna is something I recite pretty much daily. The first word, though, abadika, it's interesting to see that it's oppressed. What is it that's pressing in on us? And so we can look at these things that are somewhat synonymous but different angles. So the oppression, the pain that comes with the body, affliction, and then extreme illness. So the balha intensifies that word of illness. So this is what Anuruddha is dealing with. And at that time, several mendicants, several monastics went up to Venerable Anuruddha and said to him, "What meditation does Venerable Anuruddha practice so that physical pain doesn't occupy his mind?" And I love the way that that's phrased, that there is physical pain, but it's present without occupying the mind. And Anuruddha's response is, "Reverends, I meditate with my mind firmly established in the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation, so that physical pain doesn't occupy my mind." In that, the Pali for that, let's see if I can blow it up enough that I can read it. Chatusukho me avuso. Avuso is a lovely word. It kind of means a friend. He's translating it as reverence, but it's close associate. Might also be a way to think of it. Satipatthanasu. So I wanted that word to come out because you've probably seen it before. The Satipatthana. Supati chitta sa. Viharato. I need new glasses. There's a body affliction for you. And then upana sarika dukkha vedana chittam. So vedana, this is the feeling that the dukkha feeling does not overcome the citta, the mind, the heart, the awareness. Na pariyadaya chittanti. And so the word I wanted to really look at here is the pariyadaya. So this is something, we look at it as exhausting, wearing away. So it's taking all around and taking over. And so here we're seeing, that this is not overpowering and exhausting and deteriorating the mind, the citta. And how do we often do that? We're obsessed. So when we're ill, a lot of times there's an obsession with the illness. It comes with, how do we protect this? And this is certainly not saying don't do what will be supportive for the body. That's what the reflection the monastics do daily says, is to do what is supportive for the body so that it has good conditions for health, but you're not attached to that and you don't create other conditions. This is sometimes something I reflect on as I decide whether to take a medicine or not. If I look at the side effects of it, I may decide that kind of medication is having an adverse effect on my meditation. That some of the side effects, the fatiguing side effects of the med, and because it's one that's just for me to manage pain, I'm going to choose to be with the pain versus the side effect of the medication. And this is something that each person needs to discern. And so Anuruddha here has done the discernment that the best medication for him is the meditation on the 4 satipatthanas. So what for? I meditate observing an aspect of the body. So that's the kayanupasi viharami. So I dwell aware of the body. Feelings, which is the Vedana, mind, citta, Dhamma principles. So that would be the Dhammesu. So if you quite frequently will chant that section from the Satipatthana, or sections from the Satipatthana, or it comes up in what is mindfulness, because we very frequently chant the 8, brain today, the Eightfold Path. And within the Eightfold Path, when you get to the Sati section, it is basically going through the Satipatthana in brief. And then what follows is a phrase that we see quite a lot, atapi sampajano satima vinaya loke abhija domana sang. I meditate with my mind firmly established in these four kinds of mindfulness meditation so that physical pain doesn't occupy my mind. And here, this the part that I just left out is the Vinaya loke abhija domanasang. Yes, I'm gonna just have to come back to this another week. I'm really quite amazed at the cognitive lessoning at this morning, because normally I would be able to just give you the English right off the top of my head, and we're just gonna have to go with it's not there right now. So that can be a case in point of, being with reality as it is. When you got it, you got it, and when you don't, you don't. And if I attach to the way I think it should be, that's where this coming back up to the obsessing or deteriorating, exhausting comes in, which is beyond that level of just fatigue that happens when you haven't slept or you haven't, it's that overlay. So not going to overlay, just going to acknowledge, don't have the English today. But this sutta is so in brief. It just says, I meditate observing the body, the feelings, the mind, the Dhamma principles. So it's good to go to other suttas that can give us more information about what Anuruddha is talking about. How does he practice with these things? So as I said, this 52 in the Samyuttas, that whole section is in regards to Anuruddha. So we'll go to the first one, which is a sutta called In Private. Now the only reason it's named this is because it starts out with Anuruddha is in seclusion at the time of the retreat, the time of the sutta. And the good thing about that is, he's got a lot of time and space to be able to reflect on it. This is not a sutta particularly about seclusion. It's just the naming convention is often off of whatever the first aspect of the sutta is. That's how it gets named. Quite frequently, not always though. So here we are. So I have heard, at one time Venerable Anuruddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. Then, as Anuruddha was in private retreat, this thought came to his mind. And I will say that being in private retreat, I was so blessed to have 5 weeks of seclusion up at, or I guess south of here, about an hour, at Cloud Mountain this winter. And, when the thoughts come to the mind then, especially the Dhamma thoughts, there's so much spaciousness for them to be really attended to. So Anuruddha is in retreat, and this thought comes up. Whoever has missed out on these 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation has missed out on the noble path to the complete ending of suffering. That's huge. The other side, whoever has undertaken these 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation has undertaken the noble path to the complete ending of suffering. He's really saying this is how important mindfulness is. And this is how important it is to spend time, and really consistently spending time, with the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Because if we don't attend to it, we're missing a foundation, a support, a basis for the complete ending of suffering. So highly recommend, as Anuruddha does here. So this powerful statement, has gone out of the mind of Anuruddha, and it's picked up by Venerable Moggallāna. Then Venerable Moggallāna knew what Venerable Anuruddha was thinking. As easily as a strong person would extend or contract their arm, he appeared in front of Anuruddha. He was very known for his psychic powers, and said to him, Reverend Anuruddha, how do you define the undertaking of the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation by a mendicant, by, he's talking about a monastic, but this is applicable to anyone who's undertaking the path. So this is great because a lot of times I'll read a sutta in brief and I'll be like, okay, that's nice, but how do I do it? So here we're getting a little bit more of how to practice with the foundations of mindfulness. Reverend, it's when a meditator, with respect to the body internally, meditates contemplating the nature of arising, meditates contemplating the nature of dissolution, meditates contemplating the nature of arising and dissolution, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. So the key here is that it's the internal aspects of the body that's being meditated on here. And we're doing it in a manner that's mindful, keen, interested, aware. The direction is towards the process of the body. Mindful, and then rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world is a shorthand for, and the hindrances are at bay. They're set aside at this point. So we're not being afflicted by the hindrances while we are examining the body when we're in the deepest of the meditations. Now, if the hindrances are present, then I would recommend looking at the hindrances as they're appearing internally within your meditation of the body, and doing something to have an antidote towards those hindrances so that you are as clear as possible as you are doing the internal investigation of the body. If you've got, I don't want it to be like this, which is a hindrance, it makes it hard for clear seeing of what's going on. And same with attachment or restlessness, or any of the hindrances can really get in the way here for clear seeing. Next, he says, with respect to the body externally, they meditate contemplating the nature of arising, meditate contemplating the nature of dissolution, meditate contemplating the nature of arising and dissolution, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. And then the last is internally and externally. So externally, there are so many things written on what does it mean to be external to the body. And some say, well, it's the bodies of others. Some say it can be the external surface of this body. Some say that it's anything that's not the body. There are lots of different ways to interpret this. I generally don't try to pin it down unless I'm doing a particular meditation, in which case I may use a me, them type of approach to internal, external, or a within and without, a within and without. But I do not like to get dogmatic on which is the right approach. On Sunday with the Clear Mountain community, we were looking at the Chanki Sutta, which in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 95. And in that one, it really says to look at and say, well, this teaching, this is what I have experienced with it, or this is what I have heard about it, or this is, but I am open for it to be otherwise. So that's the way that I like to look at it, is do a practice at it, but then don't feel like you then need to be in argument with others about, does this word mean this or that? Unless that is really as a debate to understand and open with that complete openness of heart. So what will direct my practice? So I just bring that in as a key factor in how do we approach the suttas. We don't approach it as a dogmatic, it means this. Even, when you're looking at the precepts, look at them as what is it that has the effect that is wholesome in my heart, rather than a stick to beat someone with. Because anytime that you are approaching with a closed fist kind of approach to discussing a topic, it is not going to necessarily bear good fruits. You can hold internally, yes, this is the truth. And if you're teaching the Dhamma, you can espouse this is the truth. But you hold it with this sense of, and I'm open. I'm open for it to be otherwise. Even at the Arahant level, there can be deep, deep, and I'm speculating. Even at the Arahant level, there can be deep understanding of the nature of reality and the path that got you there to that understanding, and openness that there may be other paths, or that there actually are other paths to come to the truth of the nature of reality. So this is really a way to explore, so that you say soft and open, but then very firmly rooted in what it is that keeps you keen, aware, mindful, and without the hindrances. So that's a little sidebar there. Then we're getting into the section that I think is very interesting, and I'll open it up for input here and there throughout this. So we've gone through the first of the Satipatthanas, the body, internal, external, both internal and external. And then it goes to this interesting set here. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. And that's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive. That's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and the repulsive. That's what they do. If they wish, may I meditate perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive and the unrepulsive. That's what they do. And then last, if they wish, may I meditate staying equanimous, mindful and aware, shunning both the repulsive and the unrepulsive. That's what they do. And I was having a chat session with Ayachitananda from Karuna Buddhist Vihara yesterday, and we were coming up with examples of these throughout the different, because this repeats for each of the Satipatthana bases. What are examples where you can switch your perception? We do this a lot in our lives. Now, once you reach the stage of full capability with the meditation aspects, particularly at the later stages of awakening, you can just really switch your perception very, very quickly, switch your perception at will, because you really understand the nature of perception. For most of us, it's a work in process. Some examples may be hair on your head. Well, I don't have any right now, but just gone to the stylist and you come out and it's all done or whatever. That's considered beautiful, right? Pluck a hair out of that beautiful hairdo and put it in the food at the restaurant. That's considered repulsive. The food, even if I've bought processed food, and it's on the plate and it's well laid out, and you may have different opinions about processed food, but it's been processed in a way that's elegant and beautiful. But when the body processes the food, when it goes into the toilet, that's considered repulsive. Do others have examples of when they've seen repulsive in unrepulsive, or unrepulsive in repulsive, or an opening where everything seems repulsive or everything seems beautiful? I'm just curious, have you practiced with this? This is not a beginner practice, but it's probably something has come up at times. Ajahn, speaking of the toilet one, Ajahn Brahm talks about he'd been in meditation and then he went out of the meditation hall, went to the restroom, and he turned around, and as he was about to flush the toilet, he saw the feces in the toilet, and he's like, oh, that is so beautiful, so, just because his heart was so full with the meditation, his perception was such that he's like, That was the most gorgeous turd I'd ever seen, or something along those lines. Um, and, a lot of times we call that a subha practice of the unbeautiful. But when you start to see, oh, it's really based in sanya, my perception. When I'm really practicing, it's my perception that gives this valiance of repulsive or unrepulsive. And we'll look at those words in a moment. Okay, so nobody's got examples. We're on the body now, and this is the section that is usually the most crude. I mean, literally, in both regards of unrefined and also in the sense of topics that are just kind of gross. This last one, may I meditate staying equanimous, mindful and aware, shunning both the repulsive and the unrepulsive. This one came up very strongly for me. It's not something I've shared much because it's a kind of it was a tender topic for quite some time for me. I was helping to care for my mother near the end of her life. She was in a care facility, and so there were professional nurses there, but there didn't seem to be any around at that moment, and it was just my sister and I there. And my mother was groaning, and she could no longer speak. And I turned her over, and I could see she really needed to use the restroom, and she's no longer able to get out of bed, and so I saw that, and there was this movement of heart to help my mother. And I had no sense of, well, this is feces that's not coming out of her, and she needs help. I just asked my sister to give me gloves. I helped her. I took care of it. And I would say that I was in no way grossed out. And I really wasn't either leaning into the love. I was just trying to be careful and caring to help with the situation. And I looked back on it later and I saw I was fairly equanimous. Okay, this is what it is, and this is the situation, and this is how I can care for it. We were staying with a nurse, and I did talk to her later. It was like, did I do the right thing? And she's basically validated that that was the help that my mother needed. So there really can be these times in sometimes distressing situations where there can be an equanimity, where we're not grossed out, where we're not repulsed, and we're also not attracted and not leaning into. So we're not swayed. So we'll maybe leave the grosser topics behind now and move on to feeling. Oh, let's do the definitions first, and then we'll move on to feeling. So up here, I hope that's not jumping around too much. There we go. The Pali, here you're seeing the repulsive dwelling, and so these are the words I'm looking at down here. Patikula, unpleasant, disagreeable, repulsive. It's also the aversion to, the not wanting. And the opposite, by adding the at the beginning, the turns it into attractive, agreeable, not disagreeable. And the breakdown of the word, the patikul, the root of that is that it's an obstruction or an embankment. So literally it's so the pati can be dropped. It can also, it's, or against, so that's really what it is here, is against the slope. So I'm repulsed by it, I'm going against it. Or the opposite of that would be the putting the at the beginning. But I found it interesting also that there's another word for pati, which is that we're being ruled or mastered by it. So basically we're under the control of the slope, the embankment, what is the obstruction. When we put the word sanyi at the end of it. That's from sanya, perception. So perceiving as disagreeable, considering to be unpleasant. And it's really in this perceptive act that we're either leaning into or sliding with. And that perception is something that's conditioned. And that's what this whole nature of seeing the repulsive and the unrepulsive and the repulsive, etc., is seeing the conditionality of our sanya, of our labeling, of our um, categorizing, that aspect of our awareness comes from conditioning. And then once you are more experienced with the meditation, you realize you can more quickly switch from what conditioning you're basing this on. And you begin to see what forms sanya, my perception. Oh, the way that my morning went is, that phrase, I got up on the wrong side of the bed. Well, that's shading your perception because of that early morning experience. And we really start to play with this is like, what is conditioning my perception right now? We'll get into this more with the other foundations of mindfulness. And then also the word viharati, that's where you dwell, you stay, you live, but it's also where you remain or continue. So I think of this as where am I hanging out? Where am I, putting, I use abiding a lot. Where am I abiding? Where's my mind abiding? Where's my body abiding? Where's my attention abiding? And that really moves me to look at the conditionality and make choices in a more wise, um, Dhamma aligned way. All right, so looking at time, yeah, I better get moving on here. Let's see. Let's move on to feelings. And this is the Vedana. And feeling tone, that can be really the sense of like and dislike. This is not the emotions. The emotions come more in the next foundation of mindfulness. Here is just that, leaning toward, leaning away, perceiving it as pleasant, perceiving it as not. So that's what we are when we see the word feelings as the translation in English, where we're not talking about the emotions, but more of the tone of yes or no. So with respect to feelings internally, they meditate contemplating the nature of arising, meditate contemplating the nature of disillusion, meditate contemplating the nature of arising and disillusion, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. And then with feelings, so feelings internally, feelings externally, and feelings internally and externally. So this is the Vedana, and again, you can think of it as the experience, I like, I don't like. I do a lot of embodiment work and really paying attention to the lean or the pull back. The body will often, or I was talking to somebody the other day who said it needs to be a full-bodied yes. Now, if they were talking about whether they agreed to do something or not. Is it a full-bodied yes? The tone of this is towards yes. Or, I was looking at something, it's like, do I want to do that? Does it make sense for me to do that at this time? And cognitively, there were maybe good reasons for me to do it, but in my belly, there was a no. The Vedana tone internally, as I reflected, should I agree to do that? There was a no. And so we can look at this feeling tone of I like, I dislike in an embodied internal way, We can look at it externally, the feeling tone. I mean, people have walked into a space and there's this kind of sense of it feels great here, it feels off here, or so you can also see the Vedana of another person. And it's really interesting, two of us can approach something and we will have different Vedana, different like or dislike. Easy one would be food. Two people can approach the buffet and one is going to be attracted to one thing and another is going to be repulsed by that very same thing. So that's another way you can work with internal and external. Let's see, on the terms of like and dislike examples, does anyone have an example of how liking or disliking, what follows? We've got internal and external, and then we've got the same set. I see the repulsive in the unrepulsive in the repulsive. I see the unrepulsive in both the repulsive and unrepulsive. I see the repulsive in both. Or I stay equanimous, mindful, and aware, shutting both the repulsive and unrepulsive. Any examples with feeling tone that anyone has? I'll put one down. Except I don't know if I can spell the word. I'll have a Vedana around being able to spell it or not. Croissants. Oh, it fixed it for me. So I would, walk into a room, I'd see the croissants, I'd smell the croissants, and there was a definite attraction to croissants. And please, this is now past. We're talking, 15 years ago. And then I came to understand that I had a gluten sensitivity. And so I would walk into the room, and for a while there was still this draw, but then there was something really clear. I knew the results of eating gluten. And I literally could walk into a room after a while, see the freshly made croissants on the counter, and be repulsed. It was like somebody had left rat poisoning on the counter. Same object, but the Vedana, the feeling tone that came up when my eye contact met with the object of croissant, the sanya, the perception that arose in regards to the Vedana, the feeling tone, was different. Same object, different Vedana. And if people have examples, you're welcome to share them. If you don't, you can contemplate this later. So it takes a little experimentation. Like I said, this is not your beginner practice typically. Okay. In the interest of time, we will then continue on. The next of the foundations of mindfulness is the mind itself, the citta, which I don't always translate that as mind. I sometimes translate it as heart. I would include, it's this place of connection, whether it's a cognitive or a heart sense or but it's not thinking, as in the cognitive wondering about. There's a mental valence to it. So anger is an example, and that's one that's used in the Satipatthana Sutta. So we're going to examine this citta, mind, heart, internally, externally, internally, and externally. And we're going to look at that same thing with the repulsive, the unrepulsive, and the equanimous in regards to it, with our perception. So in this case, we're looking at the mind. And in the Satipatthana Sutta, it says, I'm aware, keen, aware, mindful. When I'm looking at it, that the mind or the citta, the heart, has anger in it. Or I am aware that anger is not present in the heart, the mind. or I'm aware that the mind is spacious, or I'm aware that the mind or heart is constricted. So these are the types of things that we're looking at here. It's the quality of the mind. Some of this is, are the hindrances present, are they not? Now the real examination of that comes in the next of the Satipatthana foundations. But even here, I can begin to see, is the quality of my heart generous or stingy? Is the quality of my mind focused in an open, clear way, or is it really attached? You can begin to look at the tonality of the experience. And this is one example-wise. Anger is good. It leads me to protest things that need to be protested. It helps me to act. Now, that is looking at something repulsive as unrepulsive. I've got whole talks on anger because anger is never good in its totality. When it's that tone in the heart, it's not good, it's not wholesome, it's not healthy. And when you're moving with the anger in response, it's contaminated. Now, there are aspects of anger that will bring awareness. Something is off, something is wrong, something is not wholesome here. But if the heart becomes contracted, constricted, and the force of it is you can taste it in your mouth. When that quality is what you're moving out of, that's moving out of a hatred. And the hatred is not going to cure hatred. So even if what's coming towards you is highly negative and charged, responding with that same quality is not going to create a healthy, wholesome resolution. Using the power of love. So it's not saying don't respond, but it's don't label it as wholesome. Don't say, oh, it's not repulsive. But you can see the flexibility of the mind. I can look at anger as good. I can look at, I can look at qualities of relationships, the kind of love that a monastic does not engage in, which I look on that and I can say, that kind of action is pretty repulsive. And it's pretty easy for me to do that, from the life I've lived and the understanding that I've had. I can easily see that. But when you're in that relationship, those acts and qualities may be supportive for what you're building there. It's a healthy connection. And within that, you have a healthy relating. So one view of those particular ways of being with another human being can be viewed as beautiful, and other lens on it can see it as repulsive. And if we just come up with to really cultivate our awareness of how our sanya, our perception, is conditioned and malleable, then we begin to really see the nature of reality in a deeper, deeper way. Okay. Any questions on this one or comments? Or should we go through all of them and then, okay, well, I'm going to keep going, and then, because I want to leave some time for discussion either on or off recording. And I'm not going to be able to stay on as long off recording today as I do some weeks, because we have a wonderful visitor coming to go on almost round. And so I want to make sure that things are, I'm noticing these beautiful, this is a good example. There are some beautiful flowers here that, oh yes, actually the donor of the flowers is on, but they're kind of hit their lifespan. And so I'm getting a lot of allergy aroma from them right now. So the unrepulsive, the beautiful, can be perceived as, I think I want to remove that from the room before the visitors come. And isn't that the way it really is in our world? So you can take these easy examples of a flower that is changing, and this can bring us to really deeper resolution that everything is changing. And we see in this, he's talking about the nature of arising, the nature of disillusion. Okay, so now we are at the Dhamma principles. With respect to Dhamma principles, we are looking at it internally, externally, internally and externally. Meditate contemplating the nature of arising. Meditate contemplating the nature of disillusion. Meditate contemplating the nature of arising and disillusion. Keen, aware, and mindful. Rid of covetousness and displeasure for the world. Examples of this one where we're looking at the repulsive and the unrepulsive, as I was talking with Ayachitananda, this one took me a moment to kind of like weigh it out. What could they mean here? And then we came up with that within the Dhamma foundation, the main thing we're looking at is, are the hindrances present? Are the awakening factors present? So am I cultivating something that is supportive toward liberation or something that is obstructing it? And where would you ever see that something that was unrepulsive was repulsive? It seemed kind of counterintuitive. Like in the negative example of the above one with anger, there can be that aspect that in society the hindrances are productive. Our advertising that we see all the time, just do it, buy this and you will, be cool. Or maybe they don't use that word anymore, whatever the word is for today. Fly. No, is that old? I think that one's old too. So whatever the word is, you've got advertising trying to say that the hindrances are good. Go after what you desire. Suppress and put down what you don't. But that seemed like it was really, again, outside the Dhamma. And we realized that even the enlightenment factors, at a certain point when you're practicing and you're doing the cultivation of the awakening factors, there gets to be the point where the contemplation is too agitating. And so, this example could be that the discernment, enlightenment factor is too busy, and that we want to sink into meditation and spaciousness. And that what we're really aiming for is freedom. And so we can see even this aspect that is good and wholesome, that there are suttas that talk about, I'm running. Well, wouldn't it be more settling to walk, to sit down, to lie down, to clear the mind, to meditate? And from that state, then there's letting go. And so what is more attractive than even the enlightenment factors is letting go. So this is what we came up for this one. I will be taking this one to other Dhamma teachers who have more experience with this sutta to get better examples for the future. But this is about path practice. And so this is what we're doing here. We're looking at the foundations. We're seeing how can we pick apart what perception is. I will say also that this set of repulsive and the unrepulsive, etc., this appears in quite a number of suttas when I was mentioning it to Ayachitananda, Ayachitananda said, "Oh, that's one of my favorite suttas." But I realized she wasn't actually talking about the Anuruddha Sutta. I didn't ask her which one, but I am going to guess that she was thinking about the Metta Sahagata Sutta, which is a really beautiful place to look at these repulsive and unrepulsive, because what it does is it takes each of the Brahma Viharas. Maybe we'll do this sutta one of these times if we haven't already. We could do it again. It takes each of the Brahma Viharas, and then after you've cultivated, for example, metta, equanimity is the easiest one with this, but any of them, after you've cultivated the Brahma Viharas, then look at your sanya, your perception. Look at, I do metta meditation, and I tell the story often about the alms round where the woman walked by and said something derogatory, as if you have nothing better to do, you know. And my heart was so full of metta. I'm like, as if I have nothing better to do. You see me. And so my perception was so filled with metta that even these repulsive words, the tonality of which she was giving this up to me, it didn't land. My perception was like, oh, the sweetest music you have spoken. So we really do practice in this way. Equanimity is the strongest one for doing this. I will just show, I think that'll show up on the, so if you go to Sutta Central for the SN 4654, there's a note that Bhante Naleo has put in that shows all of the places in the canon. Well, I think it's all. I'm going to do a more exhaustive search to double check that. But he generally is spot on, of where these set of repulsive, unrepulsive through equanimous appears. And so it's very worthwhile because it's a tricky, like I say, it's not a basic practice. It's good to get the context of where this comes from. So I wanted to introduce that a really powerful place to do this practice from is after having really engaged with the Brahma Viharas. And this will keep your mind very aligned and pure. Okay, so let's just go to the ending of the sutta. All right, scrolling down. So yes, it says, if they wish, may I meditate staying equanimous, mindful and aware, ignoring both the repulsive and the unrepulsive. That's what they do. That's how to define the undertaking of the 4 kinds of mindfulness meditation by any practitioner. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So there's a lot there. The real takeaway is to play with it. Play with looking at perception, looking at what conditions my perception, looking at, do I always see the same thing as attractive or unattractive? Is there always a pull toward that thing, or do I sometimes push away? There's the saying that you can be given the best food, and you just, it's so attractive, and so they bring you a second dish of this best food, and you can eat that one too. Then they bring a third, and you're really getting full, but you manage to take it in. They bring a fourth, and it is utterly repulsive. So we can really find these places in our lives where perception is conditioned by the context and by the experience. So I offer this as an exploration today. Probably have about, maybe 5 minutes here if there are any questions that you'd like to have on the recording, any comments. And then we'll do the paying respects if you wish, and close the YouTube, and we can continue to have a little conversation for not too terribly long today afterwards. So anything anyone would like to bring forward?
Thank you, Aya. Um, I can you say more about I've had that experience too, where you said, and I was just really enjoyed uh how you're sharing about how you had so much metta. It didn't really, it's like you saw the anyway, it doesn't affect one much, the more our heart is. But you said compassion is even better at that. Do you mind saying?
Equanimity. Equanimity
Or yeah,
is
okay.
yeah, compassion is good too, definitely. Well, I think the
Sorry, I'm
piece.
just waking up.
Yes, and you'll see your perception change throughout the day from waking up to going to bed. It's wonderful to look at that time arc. I will say a moment for compassion. You might not have been on at the point I was talking about with my mother and caring for her. But out of compassion, there was this equanimity that was present the repulsiveness of what was happening in her body at that time was not affecting me. That out of compassion, I was moved in a way that I could stay equanimous to the body functions and provide care. But with equanimity, the reason I say it's the strongest for this is because with equanimity, we are balanced in the reality of things as they are. And so I'm not shaken by the valence of liking and disliking. A phrase I don't much use phrases anymore when I do the Brahmavihara practice, but let me see if I can remember the one I used to use for equanimity. I remain lovingly undisturbed by the changing conditions of passing reality. Things are just as they are. For the equanimity practice, there's really the things are like this. Things are just as they are. I am not disturbed by it. I understand that karma is at work here. I understand that this is a conditioned realm. This is a conditioned reality. That these are the nature of the realm that I live within. And so, from that standpoint, it's much easier because I don't have a strong leaning to be able to then just shift my perception. Personality wise, I am of the type, I am the silver lining type. And but I also have had to work a lot to be able to manage change because I can feel bodily off more easily than some. So, what I began to really practice with is okay, this is this condition we have now. We're going to go do this. We're going to do it at this time. It's like this. That's going to be lovely to see those people. And then, oh, I get a message so and so's not coming, and we're meeting at a different location. And there's often had been, and it still happens a little. Oh, oh, I don't like that. It's changing. I don't like it. I was, I was so looking forward to meeting those people at that place. And then now there's the shift in perception where there's a little bit of cognitive there. Oh, but if so and so's not there, then so and so's going to have a chance to speak more about this, and I'm really interested. And isn't that going to be great that there's a space for that? And because we're meeting at this other place, it that's a quieter place. It'll be easier to hear them. And, so this is the way that you can just switch your perception towards what is it that is uplifting rather than down. Or I can create depression very easily because I know what the qualities are that bring that about. And so if I find that my mind is leaning towards a depression type of response, then I can choose to go deeper if I wish, which I no longer tend to do. But really, sometimes going into that depression state, you really start to learn something clearly about the gratification of going that way. What are the benefits of depression? And so then I can, again, change my perception. And coming at it from the grounds of equanimity gives me the most flexibility towards being able to shift, even down to shifting a view. But really, the key is at that sanya, the perception level. So I think, does that address what you were asking, Susan?
Very well. Thank you.
Okay, great.
Very thorough. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, let's do anyone who wishes can join me in paying respects to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and then I'll turn off the YouTube recording and I'll have a few more minutes for anything that's come up that you don't want on a recording. Arahang Samha Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammam Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savakasangho Sanghang Namami. So